Alright, this one's going to be pretty simple. If you're sick of being called racist, sexist, homophobic, whatever they want to call you, I'm going to at least take perhaps one word at a time out, but for this one, I'm going to take the word homophobic out of it. They just like to throw their word salad. They mix it up, and they hope that you get quieted by their insults. Now, here's why homophobia, although it may exist, exists in very small quantities and not relevant enough to change a person's action. There's a difference between an irrational fear and a sexual preference. Now, when it comes down to someone who's homophobic, they would then be unreasonably afraid of, sexuality from their own sex. So women would, if they are homophobic, be afraid of sexual activity of any sort with other females, and males who are homophobic would be uncomfortable, uneasy, and irrationally afraid of sexual conduct of any kind with other males. Now, this clearly isn't the case. You look at any way that these people gather, social, workplace, I guess even private life, you will see, well, I guess it's most specifically in the open, you will see men being more sexual with men, speaking more sexually with men. Talking about, I guess, because men have it available, putting dicks in other men's mouths, having anal intercourse with other men. They'll talk about this. Yeah, there's a slant of humor about it, but they'll talk about it. They'll engage in grab ass, or whatever you want to call it. They will do sexual gestures around one another. And if they were homophobic, this wouldn't be the case. Now, women are allowed to do anything they want, and you can't tell them to stop because then you're sexist. But, also, you'll find that women will be sexual towards other women. I'm not talking about, they just go right in the bedroom and bang. What I'm talking about is, talking about, oh, you look sexy today. Again, having sexual conversations, gestures, all things that would be avoided were they actually homophobic. Now, not wanting to have sex with another female is not homophobic. Not wanting to have sex with another female is just a sexual preference. Same for men. You're not homophobic if you don't want a guy to put his dick in your mouth. It's just not your preference. Now, you can be irrationally afraid of a guy putting their dick in your mouth because you just don't want it. You can be irrationally afraid of a guy putting their dick in your butthole because you just don't want it. But it's founded in sexual preference. What I am going to say is out there is a lot of heterophobia. Heterophobia is clearly widespread, and I don't want to say it's an irrational fear. There's a decent rational base for the heterophobia to start out at, and it's present in women in one way, in the fact that, and you'll see it all the time. If it depends on the social area you're at. In the social area I'm at, you see it. If a woman does not want to interact with a guy sexually, they won't associate with them at all. They won't talk with them. They won't spend time with them. They won't have a laugh with them. They won't get to know them. And since they won't get to know a person unless they're planning on having sex with them, because, they then view it as a threat. The real crux behind it is that from a female's perspective, she doesn't want to give a guy the time of day and then later have to ward off sexually advances. Like, it would be absolutely fine if the two of them could spend time together, have a few laughs together, and then he wasn't going to sexually aggress her, or at least she wasn't going to expect him to. But that's why they're going to be so harsh, so cold. It's why they won't talk to you, even if you're not seeking sex, because they don't want to have to push sex away later. Now, that's heterophobia, because it is entirely possible for adults to interact, and even let's say sex comes on the table, they could then say no and still maintain some sort of dialogue, but that's only for how do I want to say, forward-thinking of individuals that are above their basic lizard programming. I mean, let's say you want to move on to the next stage with a girl because you enjoy spending time with her and she says no, that doesn't mean you have to stop the interactions entirely. But then there's the shame and the rejection cycle that you go through in your brain and in your body and the way the emotions actually feel. So it's sworn off completely. It's kind of this irrational fear, this heterophobia. All right? So that's how I see it most commonly displayed in women, is the fact that it halts communication, it chills communication with men because they will only communicate with men that they would be receptive to sexual advances. Now, that's not all women, it's just a great deal of women. The ones that can reach beyond that are either secure in their sexuality and have a mate, or don't have a problem either being fond after or dealing with adults on an adult level. Now, how it surfaces in men, it's easier for me to see because I'm a male, is also a chilling of interaction. It's a change of behavior, particularly and predominantly in the workplace. Let's go back in time, back to when we were an honor culture. And at this time, you would have a man challenge another man to a duel if he insulted a female that he wasn't even courting. Like, let's say if, you had a grouping of people in a part of town, and one man said to this female at random, you're a slut or whatever, and you would have a man come up and assault him or threaten to kill him to defend that lady's honor, even if they weren't involved with that lady. All right? It's not quite that bad today. But if you don't handle your interactions 100% correctly in the adult world, when you're crossing the gender boundary, if you're a guy and you don't talk to a girl in the right way, or if you talk to her and for some reason she doesn't wish for you to talk to her, there are immediate consequences. Ostracism, in all of its forms in society, hits adults very, very hard. Now, it hits children during the developmental stage hard too, but when you're an adult, it's harder to work around it because you're not really growing as much as you used to. You're not changing as much as you used to. So men kind of swear off these social interactions with females, a lot of them, because they could get canned right away. Now, we're supposed to be okay with that, and a lot of people are okay with that, but it is tiring. It is mentally tiring, and wanting to speak to a person that just happens to have a different set of genitals shouldn't be so taxing, so difficult. However, because of how we've been programmed to be enemies across the fence, the gender relations are difficult. And there comes the irrational fear. We're all people. We're all human beings. We should be able to interact socially without the connotation of sex, and therefore without the connotation of heterophobia. Now I'll come back to the workplace. The workplace is where it is utmost prevalent for men. Men are very, if they are smart and aware, very heterophobic in the workplace. Because, and yes, it feeds into the sexual harassment, the sexual assault, it all being very one-sided. It's really, really hard for a woman to get in trouble doing these things. It's very, very easy for a man to get in trouble doing these things. As we move on in the days, you see the retarded news articles. Like I saw one just recently that a man, they have a video of it, a man was being scorned at and yelled at in public, very, very high volume levels, just yelled at for sexual harassment or sexual assault. Turns out the guy was, I don't know if he was mentally disabled or if he was, I think he was highly autistic. And, the best thing in the world for him was getting high fives. And he wanted high fives from men, he wanted high fives from women. Apparently the women just thought he was sexually assaulting them. All right? There is heterophobia. Now, I do think in this case it was in the public and the guy wouldn't have his job threatened or whatever. But within the workplace, if you are a guy and you get on the wrong side of a female, you don't even have to really interact with her directly. But if you get on the wrong side, let's say, they are a supervisor in another department, or they just, work along with you, and there's a way that you conduct your business that offends them. They choose to be offended by the way that you conduct business. If they are intelligent, they can get you removed from the workplace, and there is nothing you can do about it. That's where heterophobia is present for men in their daily lives, because men have to work. There's no choice. You're a man. You got to support yourself generally, and that's a huge chilling effect where it really benefits you to try to get through your day in the workplace, to keep your job, to sustain your place of living, to keep food in your mouth and clothes on your back, is making sure that these people that you work with that have a different set of genitals don't even know your name in order to protect your viability in the workplace. But then if you want to develop relationships, friendships in the workplace, because you're going to be alongside these people for years and years, and you want to be able to talk to them every day, and you misnavigated at some point, again, if a female chooses to be offended in the workplace and she is intelligent, she can get you removed from that workplace, and there's not a thing you can do about it. All right? So the fear might be slightly irrational, but it does have a rational basis. It's clear from all workplaces, especially in academia, there's so many stereotypes about how a girl meets with a professor after class to try to get a better grade. Now, sometimes they want a makeup test. Sometimes they might offer something for it. Sometimes they're just pleading for leniency. Other times, they'll threaten the professor, give me a better grade, or I'm going to say, you tried something with me. Now, in most cases, professors, being educated individuals, if they don't let their pride get in the way, they're smart and they'll walk straight out of that room to the dean's office, wherever they got to go, and say, hey, this is what happened. But in many other cases, when a female walks up to a man and says, do this or I'm going to scream rape, they're fucked, because the accusation is the proof. And throughout the process, if there is an investigation, maybe there's not an investigation, they could have their property destroyed, they could lose their job, and they could get beaten up before there's any proof or any conviction. Now, that is a very extreme level, and really mostly prevalent in college. But in your everyday workplace, we'll work up the chain. There's from not talking to them to not wanting them to know your name so they can't point you out in case you offend them and you didn't know what you did, to now you are interacting with them. You think you're on a decent basis, and then you crack the wrong joke, and because they have a different set of genitals than you, you're homeless. So, in conclusion, racism, yeah, that's a form of judgment. We're programmed for survival to judge people when we see them. Sexism, sure, men and women are different, so you're going to treat them differently, and they kind of demand to be treated differently as much as they're saying they want to be treated the same. But when it comes to homophobia, heterophobia is the reason why we're at each other's throats. Homophobia is not nearly as prevalent.